Hey everybody, welcome back to my coverage of the PogChamps 3 tournament. This is the xQc versus Pokimane match. xQc is leading 1-0. If you missed the first game, you can check it up there in the info box. Come back and watch this video once you're done. xQc is the rating favorite, but both of these players, we've seen very good chess from both of them so far, so who knows? This is anybody's game, but Pokimane needs a win right now to take this match to the tiebreakers. So let's just see what happens. We have d4 and d5 from xQc. Pokimane now plays bishop f4, going for that London system. Pokimane has said that she likes the London system because it works against everything, basically. We have knight c6 and e3 from Pokimane, e6 and now knight f3 and knight f6 from xQc. Both players continuing to develop. We have bishop d3 and bishop b4 check. And this bishop b4 check is not really the best move. We saw xQc sort of make this positional inaccuracy in the last game because now it allows Pokimane to block this bishop with tempo on the bishop. In the last game, Pokimane blocked the check with her bishop. That's not possible right now, so will she block with the knight or the pawn? That's the question. Well, she does block with c3, so that is definitely the best move for her right now, and we have bishop d6 from xQc. And once again, this is why this bishop b4 move is not good, because you basically gave white this c3 move for free. If you wanted your bishop to come to d6, you should have just developed it there in the first place. We have knight e5 now from Pokimane, sort of just trying to activate her knight. And as we've seen, xQc loves to go for trades, even if it is not beneficial to him or not giving him anything. And he does go for the trade here, but he does not use the right piece. He captures with the knight. He plays knight takes e5, and this trade is just terrible for xQc because after d takes e5, this is actually a pawn fork on the bishop and the knight. So here, if xQc wanted to trade, he would have had to trade with the bishop, giving up the bishop pair. And yeah, you just can't trade with the knight here. So knight takes e5, and after d takes e5 from Pokimane, this is a fork on xQc's bishop and knight. However, xQc tries sort of a really tricky move here with g5, and so now the idea is if Pokimane captures this pawn, then xQc can take this pawn on e5 and be totally fine. So Pokimane does not fall for this. She plays bishop g3, continuing to support her pawn, and now xQc is going to lose a piece. He goes for knight h5, which also hangs the knight, by the way, so white now has a choice whether to take the knight or the bishop. Pokimane goes for the bishop with e cross d6, and here xQc continues to trade with knight takes g3. Not something you really want to be doing when you're down in material, but, you know, xQc does it anyway. Pokimane is totally okay with this. She plays h takes g3, definitely the right pawn to take with, opening this file and maintaining a single pawn island, and we have queen takes d6 from xQc. And here Pokimane makes a bit of a mistake. She plays bishop takes h7. And basically what you're doing here is now you can't castle kingside, because if you do, then your rook leaves the defense of your bishop, which means you have to castle queenside, and you're still at least 1, 2, 3 moves away from doing that. And during that time, this bishop will be pinned to this rook. So you're basically stepping into a pin here. And if you can avoid stepping into pins, you generally do not want to step into a pin for no reason. So rook takes h7 would have definitely been a much better move here for Pokimane. But sometimes, you know, activating these rooks in the beginning of the game can be hard for beginners to see, because rooks generally, you know, they're not active until you at least move them one time. So maybe that is the reason why this rook takes h7 move was hard for Pokimane to see. But we have bishop takes h7, and let's see if xQc can punish Pokimane for this. We have queen b6 now and queen b3. Queen takes b3, once again xQc going for those trades. We've basically seen him accept a trade or initiate a trade whenever he can. And we have a takes b3 from Pokimane, e5 from xQc, opening up this diagonal for the bishop and just controlling the center a little more, and now e4 from Pokimane. And here, as Pokimane, xQc has a really sneaky threat with this last e5 move, which is bishop f5, and the bishop will be won, basically, because once again, this bishop is pinned to this rook. So here, as Pokimane, you need to play a move like rook to h5, and then if bishop f5 is played, now you can play bishop g6, and this hangs hangs your bishop, but you're counterattacking black's rook. And if black trades rooks, then you save your bishop. So Pokimane could have continued like this. However, she does not. She plays e4. This temporarily stops bishop f5, but after d cross e4, you still need to do something about your bishop. So here you could play a move like rook h5 once again. But this is kind of a hard move to see, and also this bishop f5 threat is very sneaky. So instead we have knight d2 from Pokimane, and it looks like Poki will lose this bishop on h7, which she does after bishop f5, and there's no way of saving this bishop. So here the best try would have actually been to take this bishop and then lose your rook, because it's better to lose an exchange than to lose a full piece outright. We would have knight f1, and white would have 2 pieces for the rook. But instead, we have simply f3 from Pokimane and just giving up the bishop completely. We have bishop takes h7 now, and once again, rook takes h7 would have been better from xQc for the same reason. When you take with the bishop, you are stepping into this pin. And you can get out of the pin in one move, but I mean, this does allow white to play this knight takes e4 move. You still need to get out of the pin, and now you're going to lose a second pawn. So you have to castle here, and now you lose this pawn. So white will be up a pawn, and with maybe a better pawn structure. So this is how Pokimane could have continued after this small bishop takes h7 inaccuracy. However, instead, Pokimane captures with the pawn f takes e4, and now black is back into the game, basically. We have castles and castles. Castles queenside here by xQc was definitely a mistake because it hangs this a7 pawn. So yeah, this is a very common mistake by beginners. When they castle, they either forget that they're moving their king, or they forget that they're moving their rook. A lot of times, you know, a beginner will castle queenside and then hang this f7 pawn, especially to like a knight, which then forks the 2 rooks. Or they will castle queenside and hang this a7 pawn because they forget their rook is defending their pawn. Very easy mistake to make, because castling is a very different move since you're moving 2 pieces, and it's harder to process, I guess. You're just not thinking about both pieces, since every other move in chess you're only moving 1 piece at a time. But we have this small mistake. Poki does not take advantage of it, though. She instead simply castles, and now we have rook d3 from xQc. We have knight c4 and rook takes d1. xQc going for that trade. King takes d1, and this allows now xQc to play this rook d8 move, and basically, yeah, the xQc, he first should have moved this bishop before, you know, coming down with this rook to d3, just getting out of this pin, because now when you play rook d3, you're walking into this pin, and after you trade rooks, now there's not really a good way to get out of this pin. Here you really have to play rook d8, and now this is check. So after the king moves to c1, for example, you can get out of the pin with your bishop. And after, say, like knight takes e5, bishop takes g2, and rook h7, we would have this endgame where black is up a pawn and has the bishop, so black will be better here. But yeah, basically you have to get out of this pin here with rook d8. Rook d8 is really the only good move here. But we have f6 instead from xQc, just defending this e-pawn because he noticed it was hanging. And now this gives Pokimane a chance to get off of this d-file so that there's no checks and black will be stuck in this pin. However, we have knight e3 instead, and now this gives xQc another chance to get out of the pin, which he does take with rook d8 check. And we have this sort of equal endgame nearly. Black is probably slightly better because they've got the bishop and a better pawn structure. But we'll just have to see. Either player could still win at this point. We have king e2, and now bishop takes e4, picking up that free pawn. Rook h6, going after the f pawn, and xQc saves it with f5. g4 now, and this allows f4, kicking away the knight. And once the knight moves, the g2 pawn will drop. So we have bishop takes g2 from xQc. And this is a completely winning position for xQc. So let's see if he can convert this or if he blunders. We have knight e7 check, and now king b8. Rook g6 going after that g-pawn, and now f3 check. xQc just looking to promote. We have king f2, and now rook d2 check. You do have to be careful of back rank checkmates here as xQc, but this is check. So, and there are no tactics here for white, so it is okay. King e1, and now the only move for black, rook e2 check, because I mean, I guess you could have gone back to d8 here, but you know, why would you do that? Basically, you have to save your rook and also protect from back rank checkmate. So rook e2 check, definitely the better move, keeping that rook active, and you can save yourself from back rank checkmate on the next move. King d1, and now xQc does save himself from back rank checkmate with c6. F2 would be a huge blunder here, hanging mate in 1, just because of this back rank checkmate. But we have c6 from xQc, and now this pawn will be very hard to stop, as every square is defended. We have rook g8 check, still from Pokimane, and king c7. We have knight d5 check, and this simply hangs a knight. I don't know if Pokimane simply didn't see this, but as you can see, she only had 17 seconds left. She was getting in a bit of time pressure, so maybe she just didn't know where to move or didn't know how to stop this pawn. But xQc does take this. We have c takes d5, and let's just see how xQc finishes Pokimane off. We have rook g6 and f2. This does hang the rook, but you allow now f1 equals queen. So black brings a new queen into the game. We have king e3 and queen f3 check. King d2 and queen takes g4. Rook g7 check and king to c7. Rook e7 and queen f4 check. So black may be looking to promote another pawn or just getting a fork in on white's king and rook. We have king e2 and now e4. Rook e6 check and king d7. Rook to h6, Pokimane saves her rook, and queen f3 check. King to e1, e3, rook g6, going after this g-pawn, but it's too late because black here has mate in 1, which is queen to f1, checkmate. xQc sees this, and he plays this, so we have checkmate on board. xQc takes the match 2-0 against Pokimane, and overall in this match, both players played pretty well. xQc definitely played very well. Pokimane unfortunately had that queen blunder in the first game, a few blunders in the second game, but overall pretty good chess, especially for their ratings. So yeah, very good. Here are the final standings for the Group B section. So xQc with 9 points, dnegs with 6 points, Pokimane with 3, and Rubius with 0 points. So xQc and Daniel Negreanu will be going to the championship bracket. Pokimane and Rubius will be going to the consolation bracket. So we will be covering those matches when they happen, and by we, I mean I. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say, so thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and stay awesome. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Check out my PogChamps 3 playlist, and check out another video over there. I'll see you guys.